Hey, hello again. Thanks for joining me for another episode. Pretty excited about this one here. I just got this box in the mail and I'm excited to open it up. It's from Stannarts.com. I'm going to go ahead and open this up and we're going to check it out together. Go ahead and cut through here carefully so that I don't go through and get any of the model itself, even though it should be well protected. And let's see what we've got in here. All right. Oh yeah. Okay. All right, each part is wrapped in bubble wrap, which is really nice. Let's see if I can get this open here. And here we have the head from our Tusken Raider. Again, this is from Stannarts.com. These are the same people that did the dewback kit that I built, as well as this Luke and Tauntaun kit. And he also does some other ones, some classic Boris Karloff Frankenstein kits, Bruce the Shark. Just really nice work, but I'm super excited about putting this one together here. And this head just looks fantastic. Looks really nice. The detail. He's done an amazing job again, as usual. Just can't wait to get this done. When I saw he posted this online, I just immediately jumped on there and had to order this because I've always loved the look of the Tusken Raider. And to have a half-scale bust and as beautiful as this is, look at that. The detail in the clothing, you know, the leather holster straps and everything, this robe on the outside of his shoulders, it all just looks really nice. I'm really impressed with the work that he does. And then last but not least, this should be the base for the kit. Yep, there's the base. It says Tusken Raider right on it. Still not quite sure how I'm going to paint this. Probably black with some highlights, but I haven't decided. And then the torso just fits nice and snug right in there like that. This is going to be so much fun. And then actually last but not least would be all the parts here, the remaining parts for the head. Let's see what we got here. Of course we have his eyes. This is the buck teeth or whatever that goes right around the nose. I don't know if it's a nose or if it's buck teeth, but you know, it goes in the front there. Then again, we have his eyes. Both of his eyes. And those will just fit right on there. Then we have the two large tusks which go on either side of the mouth. These are fitting very loosely. They will obviously fit better. I'm just kind of laying them there. And then we have the parts for the little horns, the tubes for his breather tube assembly. These tubes will go on either end. And then these caps would go on the outside of this breather tube assembly like so. And that would end up going around his neck. Yeah, and these little guys would just go right on top of his head and the 4 holes that we have here. Oh yeah, definitely looking forward to getting this guy together. And we also have, of course, the instructions that come with the kit, which is obviously pretty straightforward, but he does have his instructions here, which might help at least as far as if there's a certain way the tusks need to go in or anything like that. And actually the eyes, they are marked left and right. The direction of the breather tube assembly, because it is a roll. And yeah, there we go. Straightforward instructions. Alright, so I'm super excited, so let's get started. So the first thing I'm going to do here is wash off these large parts, just get rid of any oil residue or anything from them. These appear to have been actually 3D printed parts, so I'm just making sure I get off any of the residue that was from that process. Make sure they're nice and clean for the paint to stick to. I'm just using lukewarm water with some detergent. Rinse it all off the head and try to get it in all the little spaces so that paint will stick nice to this part here. Shake that off. Set that aside, let it dry. Do the same thing for the torso, a little bit of detergent, warm water. Rinse it off. I'm going to pat it down first a little bit, but then I'll be setting it aside to dry overnight. Alright, now that it's dry, I'm going to go ahead and spray the head with my Tamiya Fine Gray Primer. Get it covered nice and even so that I can apply my paints to it. Going to do the same thing with the torso. Spray it with some Tamiya Fine Gray Primer. And here we have all the parts sprayed and ready to be painted. Looking really nice. Can't even tell there's paint on it. It's pretty much the same color as the original parts, but there they are, all primed and ready to go. And the first part I'm going to start on is the torso. I'm using this shot here of a Raider from episode 4 for my color references for the clothing, the head, all the leather, all that. I'm going to use a little bit of deck tan here with a touch of yellow, maybe a touch of beige brown in there for doing the clothing. So actually for this robe, I'm going to start out with an off-white. The robe is pretty much almost totally white, so I'm going to start out with just an off-white here. I just added a touch of yellow to it, to white, with a little bit of that deck tan. And then again, I'm going to use flat white with wooden deck tan for the clothing underneath the robe. And that, I'm going to give it a little more of that deck tan color, where the robe remains a little more of the white color. Slightly different shades, but they are differentiated. You can see here when I'm done painting there. Then I'm going to add a touch of beige brown to the clothing, paint, and do a little bit of darker airbrushing in here and creases and areas like that that you have on this clothing underneath the robe. Just going to spray inside there, deepen those up, give a little bit of dimensionality to it and some depth in the creases of the folds. And then I have sprayed it with a Tamiya clear coat because I'm going to be doing some washes over this into the clothing to pick up all the detail of the clothing. So I sprayed it with a clear coat first. And I'm going to use some Viejo beige brown, and I've made a wash with that, adding some of that to some water, watering it down quite heavily. And I'll just begin brushing the beige brown over the clothing here and let that kind of sink into all the little recesses of the fabric. Just go around and cover all areas of the clothing. Then I'm going to pat it down, try to leave some of that darker brown inside those little fabric holes just to add some more texture. Go around the whole top here, let it dry a little bit. And then I pat it down and try to remove some of that. And here's how the inner clothing is looking so far. I'm going to use some wooden deck tan now and do a little bit of a wash over the robe. Try to pick up some of the detail of the cloth in the robe. Same thing, water down the wooden deck tan. Go over the robe with it, let it dry a bit. You can see those little like square rectangular shapes there in the robe. The texture of the robe, so I'm just going to continue doing some wash. With this, I'm trying to use a little bit of a wet cotton swab to wipe off some of the raised areas to leave the other color in the deeper areas. Not exactly turning out like I wanted it. So I'm going to use a little bit of a dry brush of Tamiya Snow White Pastel and go over to tone it back down a bit to make it more the original white color that I wanted. Just going to dry brush this pastel over this and make it more white. And that's how we're looking so far on the robe and the inner clothing. You can see some of the detail from the washing. I'm going to hold off on the clothing now and work on the leather belts. You can see here it's a dark brown on the leather belt. It's very dark in that shot there. So I'm going to start out with some Viejo chocolate brown paint. I'm going to use that for the darker brown in this area, the darker brown shade of leather in this area, and that strap up there. With a little brush here, get the small areas out of the way first. Start working on that with the Viejo chocolate brown. Get this thicker strap up here at the top of his chest. And finish working on this other half of the lower strap here on his waist. And now I'm going to add some leather brown to the pockets and the straps down the side here to make a slightly different shade of leather. So I'll apply some to this top pouch here, and I'm not liking the way that's looking. It's not light enough. So I will use it on these pockets down here. It's a slightly different shade than the chocolate brown, so I'll use it on those, but I'm not going to use it on those large pockets. It's just too dark. And there we have the pockets done from the lower strap. Now again, for this other large pocket area and the other ones, I'm going to use a different shade. If you look here, it's a much lighter brown. You can see part of it in that shot there. You can also tell in this shot, even though it's a darker photo, that it's a much lighter leather. So I think what I will use is either flat earth or beige brown. I think I'm going to try flat earth and see how that's going to look. So I have some flat earth here, and I'm going to paint this large pocket on the strap, as well as the little band that goes across the other strap the other direction. Just go through and fill all this in and paint it with the flat earth. And there we have it all painted with the flat earth, and I like the color difference there. It looks a lot more accurate to what the actual Tusken Raider looks like in the movie. The other thing I'm going to do is add a little bit of German gray wash right in here on the little holes, I guess, of where these snaps go into, where it holds down these straps. Get this one up here. Also going to apply some in the little holes here for these rings that hold these pouches. So I've given everything a really nice clear coat so I can do some more washing over all of it. And I'll be doing more gray wash. I'm going to do that in between all these little creases of this pouch here. Just to make it look a little deeper, give it some more depth, little color difference there. Fill all that in. You can see in between all those how it's darker. There's some around this little buckle strap here. I've done it inside of all these little areas, even in the cracks of this leather. You can see how it's in there, and it also just makes it look a little dirtied up already. Next, I'm going to take some more of my Tamiya wooden deck tan, use that for the little threads holding the leather together, the stitching. I've gone ahead and done all that off camera because it was too hard to do while showing on camera because I have to be so close to it and so tiny to get in there. But I've done all the stitching there with the wooden deck tan. Now I've given everything a flat coat to dull it back down. It's looking a lot more like leather now. I really like the way this is turning out and looking. Definitely looking like leather straps there. You'll notice here these little buckles are silver. You can also see those little ball hooks or whatever they are. Those are also silver. So I'm going to use some Tamiya chrome silver for these buckles on all of those, and also for these little ball areas here where those straps attach to, and for this buckle here up at the top with the strap. So with the Tamiya chrome silver and a fine paintbrush, I'll carefully go around these rings and paint them silver. And then I'll just continue going around all the rings on the entire belt, as well as these little ball areas and this right here at the top. And you can see all of those have been painted chrome silver now, as well as the strap up at the top here for the belt that's been painted silver. Now these little snaps here in the middle are a different metal. You'll notice in this photo here it's kind of like a bronze copper look. So what I have is my bronze metallic paint pen. I'm going to paint each one of those with my bronze paint pen. That will give it a nice metallic look, basically the same color as what it is on the original one from episode 4. And just on each one of them, I'm just going to carefully use my pen and outline these little snaps here until they're all filled in, and we've got all 3 metal snaps done in the bronze color. At this point, I'm going to start doing some weathering using some soot pastel, mud pastel, sand pastel. Just going to start going over all the straps, making them look dirty and weathered. Starting out with soot here, I'm going to give some dark areas to this belt, make it look like it's been handled by dirty hands, just gotten smudged and dirty from Lord knows what out there in the desert. Just continue going over all the areas here, adding some texture and depth to the belt with the soot. Then I'm going to use a little bit of mud, which is a little bit lighter, and in the darker areas the mud is a little lighter and it highlights and makes it look dirty. You can see how that's applying there. And then a little bit of sand pastel, just for a little extra highlight in areas to make it look like it's all dusty. And I really like the way this leather belt's straps have turned out. They look really nice and very much like leather. So I'm going to take some of my mud, do the same thing with the clothes now. Go over the clothes like they've been, out in the desert forever. They don't seem to change their clothes, so they wear them every single day. Going to be very dirty. So I'm going to go over all the clothes with some mud, and the same thing, I'm going to use some soot to make nice dirty areas, make it look like they've been around a lot of Lord knows what out in the Tatooine hot desert. I've also gone and painted this little ring black on the bottom, which will attach to the base, which I will be painting black. And that is the torso done. So moving on to the base, I've painted the base with the Army Painter black after previously doing the fine gray Tamiya primer. Then I've taped off the areas of this frame around Tusken Raider and these little things on the side. And I want to paint all those with silver. So for this, I'm going to use some Viejo Chrome Model Air silver that I have. It's chrome silver that's made specifically for airbrushing. Goes on really nice and smooth. I like the way it looks on here. So I'm just going to continue going around all these little areas and make sure I get all the black covered in the silver. And then after that's done, I just pull all of my tape off and reveal the pieces that I've airbrushed silver. Continue pulling all this off. Use some tweezers in here. And there we go. I like the way that came out really nice. Got the silver. Then I'm going to dry brush some silver over the Tusken Raider logo here to pick that up and make that stand out. There's a couple areas where it looks like some silver got through my tape, so I'm going to have to touch that up. And anything else around here I'll just touch up with a little bit of black as well. And I also did this little ring around the top here with some silver. So with the base done, time to go ahead and attach the torso. So I'm going to put some super glue inside here in the ring of the base, and then grab my torso, push it in there. It's nice and snug to begin with, but hold it there for a minute for the super glue to set. And we've got the torso inside the base, and that's looking really nice. So now it's time to finally move on to the head. And I'm going to start out with some deck tan. That's going to be my base color for all the bandages that are wrapped around the head. And I'll just start airbrushing the deck tan all over the head here. Pick up all the bandages. Try to get all angles so I can get inside of all the little nooks and crannies of the bandages. Go around the entire head, get it nice and covered until we have what we see here. And it looks like I got everything covered really well. I don't see any spots that are exposed. I've gone now and I've given it a coat of clear coat, Tamiya clear coat, so that I can start out with doing some washing. And that's going to be one of the first things I'm going to do here. I'm going to use some Viejo chocolate brown, and I'm going to make my own wash with some water and chocolate brown. Just dipping it in the water until I get the consistency that I want. And I'm just going to go around all the bandages, the deep areas, and just start brushing it and try to pick up all those cracks and crevices and fill those in, get that little bit of darker areas. And it'll also fill in some of the textures of the bandages that you can see there, and just bring out all the textures of these bandages. Keep going around the whole head here. And there we go. That's looking pretty good so far. Then I'm going to take some Viejo sand primer. I'm actually going to dry brush some of that on, especially on these tips, the like frayed tips of the bandages. Dry brush it all around the frayed tips, some of the edges of the bandages. Pick up some of the highlights, some of the things that pop and stand out there. It's all about building up layers. Give it all a little more depth. Then I'm going to use some soot, mud, and light sand pastels from Tamiya. Starting out with some mud here. Just go around some of the bandages, dark areas where it's either rubbed up against dirty hands or the head has been up against something else. Do the same thing with some soot pastel here. Get even some darker areas, some very dark areas where the head has been touched and rubbed against different things. I've gone and painted the eyes a flat black, so when the goggles are on. And you'll notice here the leather, there's a dark brown in the middle, so I'm going to use chocolate brown for that. So I'm going to start with this middle leather area here over the nose, and I'm going to use my chocolate brown for that. Go around until I have the entire leather band painted with the chocolate brown. And you can see all the nice cracked detail in there of the leather. Looks really nice. I don't need to be too careful with this. I need to be careful around the bandage areas, but it doesn't matter if I'm going over onto the other leather areas, because those will be painted another shade of brown anyway. And that's looking good so far. Looks like I got it all the way around. Then this strap here is a reddish brown leather. So I'm going to try hull red because it has kind of a reddish brown color to it. And I'll just start out again with my fine brush. Make sure I get the edges nice and clean. This I will have to do the edges good along the other brown strap in the middle so that they are separate. Just carefully go over these. Fill in all the areas so that it's nice and even looking. And I like the way that's looking so far. Good separation there in the colors of the leather. I think that's pretty close to what it looks like in my reference photo. And then for the front nose piece, it's a lighter brown, kind of like the leather straps on the torso. For that though, I'm going to use this Tamiya red brown. Has a little bit of a red color, but brown. It'll have a leather look to it. Use my big brush to start out here since it's a larger area. Get all this in here. In the middle here, it's not exactly black. It's very dark. I'm going to actually use German gray and mix in a little chocolate brown. So it'll be very dark, but just the slightest bit of brown tint to it. But this will be the main color of this middle section here. So I'll go through and try to fill in all these little cracks and folds with my mixture. I'm adding a little more brown, and I'm going to dry brush it on there to like do a little bit of highlights on the raised areas here. It's picking it up a little bit, not a huge difference, it's very subtle, but just the raised areas being a slightly lighter shade of the same color. And then this little flap here in the middle, if you look at this, I noticed it's actually a darker leather brown. I had it the same color as the bandages. So I'm going to start with some Viejo Flat Earth paint here. And then I'm just going to dry brush some sand primer over it to lighten it up just a touch. So it's darker than the bandages, but it's still lighter than the rest of the leather straps that are going over the nose. And this red strap here, I feel like mine isn't quite red enough, so I added a little more red and redid it, and you can see how it has a little more of that red color to it on the right side. Now it's time to do some weathering of the leather. So I'm going to start out with some Tamiya light sand here and just lightly brush over areas, make it look like dust has settled on it, dirt has settled on it. Especially on the edges, pick up some highlights. It'll also pick up all the raised areas, so all the creases and cracks and wrinkles in the leather will be darker and show up more. And then I'm going to use some mud pastel again to make it look a little dirtier. It's still lighter than the leather, but it adds a little bit of lightness, but also a little more of a dirty look to it rather than just the light sand. Especially on the folds of that middle mouth area. Those are really starting to stand out now. And now it's time. I've primed all the other pieces for the head. Then I've given them all a shot of Army Painter Matte Black. That'll be the base before I go through and airbrush all of these with some Tamiya Chrome Silver. I'm just going to paint all these pieces, get them nice and silver, solid silver shade. Starting out with the eye goggles here. Moving on to the breather end caps and the little tubes for the breather. The buck teeth of the mask. The tusks that go on either side of the mouth. And finally the little horns that go on the top of the head. So we have all of those painted now with a chrome silver. And if you look at my reference photo, all the metal has like some dark rubbed areas on the metal. Here we have the goggles for the eyes, and I'm going to do some weathering of those with some soot pastel. Trying to achieve that same look from my reference photo. I'm going to go with the curve and just rub in some soot here and try to darken it up and make it dirty and like the metal itself has worn. And I'm just going to go around all the parts, and you see here what I've done makes them look like worn metal. Either dirty or the metal's been rubbed so much that it's just, you know, rubbing the bare metal, rubbing the chrome off essentially. Also did a little bit to the buck teeth here. So it is now finally time. Put a little bit of some super glue in here, and I will attach the buck teeth to the mask. Then it's time to move on to the eye goggles. These are extremely tight. I'm actually just going to push them in. I don't even know that I'm going to glue them. At least for now, I will not be gluing them. Maybe at a later date I will. I don't know. But they fit really nice and tight and snug in there, so I'm just going to push them in. Same with the tusks. They're very tight. So I think I'm just going to push them in. Almost like a Bandai kit, glueless. Just get them in place really nice and tight. And get both of these tusks put into place, rotate them in the right position. Then we have the horns, which I will be gluing. They're a little difficult to push in there in the first place. So these I'm definitely going to use some glue. And I'm going to go around the head with each one of these horns, and I'll be gluing each horn into position. Have to kind of push them in there really good to get them into the hole. It's an extremely tight fit, but managed to get all four of them inside there. And there we have the head basically done. Looks really nice, and we're just about ready to finish up this kit. So I'm going to take some more super glue again and put it all around the inside of the torso here so that I can take the head and attach the head. And then I'll just take the head, drop it into place here, and push it and hold it for a minute until that glue dries. Last but not least, we have the breather. It's black now, but I'm going to give it some German gray, and I will be airbrushing that on. I'm not trying to cover the whole thing with German gray. I'm doing it kind of splotchy just to add some separation and not a solid color. You can see how that looks there. Then I glue on the end caps of the breather tube. One cap is already glued on. Go ahead and super glue on the other end cap here. Squeeze that into place and hold it till it dries. Then we have the tubes, which I'm not gluing in place yet, but the tubes will go on right here on either end. But first I'm going to do a little bit of a German gray wash on these end caps and just pick up the areas in here to give it some depth and detail. Then I'm going to use some Tamiya light sand and mud, and I'm going to dry brush some light sand onto this breather tube. Make it look dirty and like dust from Tatooine has settled on it and collected on it while he's breathing. And same with a little bit of mud on the end caps. At this point there are two holes on either side of the neck that the tubes connect to. So I'm going to put some super glue on each one of the ends of these tubes. Do this one tube that you can't see right now, and then put some super glue on this tube here. Then I'm going to carefully push the tubes into the holes without touching the model and getting any glue anywhere else. Just push it right into those holes and hold it in place till the glue dries. And with that dried in place, I'm going to take some of my Tamiya extra thin cement and just tap it onto the tubes here on the edge of the end caps and glue the tubes into place on the end caps. And letting those dry, we now have the entire model fully assembled. And at this point, I am ready to present you with my completed Tusken Raider half-scale bust. Thanks again for watching. Hey, if you like watching my videos, please feel free to give them a like. And so you don't miss any of my upcoming videos, click subscribe.